little button here. And we're okay. I hope this is working now, because now it's telling me we're live. Well, that didn't work out so well. Okay. I hope it works. I don't know if you heard me already. If not, I'm just gonna start over again, so that I can just cut that other stuff away when I'll be re-uploading this panel. So hello and welcome to our little panel on steampunk and its kind of problematic, or at least weird, relationship with historical costuming. I'm Clara, I'm from Ruffles Steam, and I hope, well, you apologize for our little technical difficulties, because this is like the second time I'm working with this streaming software, but I wanted it to look this nice for my guests that are with me here today. If you are watching during CoSy, well, hello, and thank you for being here live with us. If you want, please join us in the chat. You can ask questions there. You can give us comments. Whenever I'm looking over there, I'm looking at the chat. So feel free to join us in our discussion. If you're watching this after Costube Symposium, there's a handy dandy link down in the description below. So there are all the amazing videos that have been put out during this 4 days. So feel free to watch those too, but only after we finish this little panel. So, well, I'm not alone here. I have a whole group of, well, experts here with me, and I think we should get to know them a little bit. I think I'll start with Blue Lady, because she's sitting in my upper corner here. Hello, and you are a costumer too, I know that, so people down in the video description, there are links to that. How long have you been making costumes?
Oh gosh, I've been making costumes for over 10 years.
Did you start with historical costuming or with steampunk?
Historical costuming. I started a long time ago doing historical reenactment, and that's how I met my now husband. We used to do Dark Age Viking reenactment, and then we kind of gradually we came forward a bit in time, and we started attending Regency events. And some of the first historical costumes that I made that were more complicated than what we might call Dark Age costumes was our Regency outfits. And shortly after starting going to Regency events, we discovered steampunk. And yeah, and that's how we came to be in steampunk.
Could you tell our viewers where you are right now?
I am near Lincoln in the United Kingdom.
Well, hello there, because I am in Germany, and I know there are several others here that are also in Germany. And so just so you outside here know that we are discussing a little bit internationally here, we might have a slight, well, more people from Germany here, but don't mind that. We are all doing...
Wave my little British flag.
But I think we are pretty international in the chat too, so feel free to drop us your location, or at least the country you are from, in the chat, so we know from where you are watching. Well, I'm gonna continue with Fräulein Rosalinde, who some of you might know does the steampunk podcast Tentakel, Debakel with me. It's in German, so if you understand German or want to learn it, feel free to listen to our ramblings about steampunk. How have you started sewing costumes?
Well, you could say the moment I could start sewing, I started sewing some kind of costume, but it never really had anything more than just the fancy dress aspect of it. I got into actually doing steampunk around 2016, and that's also when I started to kind of up my sewing a little bit, or try to, because I wasn't able to get what I want from the shops, so I had to do it myself. And in that prospect, I also started looking into historical patterns and historical sewing a little bit more, and so right now I'm kind of doing steampunk, but I try to give it a historical, well, image for me.
On well, for our viewers, on your right side is sitting La Dutchessa. Hello, Tessa. You are here for the Netherlands, and as people can see, you have quite an, well, I'd say fantasy touch to your costuming. How would you describe your outfits?
They're very different. The one that I'm wearing is like a Victorian traveling lady. So she travels around the world, and she brings her suitcases and all her postal stamps and all her stuff with her. So all parts of the costume are collected during her travels. And it's a very mix of steampunk, fantasy, all that kind of different vibes. And there's a lot of Victorian silhouette and vibe as well. The costume, this one I didn't make myself though. This one did Marina make from Marisha, who might pop in sometime in this conversation.
Shh, don't reveal our special guest yet. Well,
you have a credit for making this.
Always. Just so you know, in the corner there's running a little slideshow with photos of our participants here, so you might get a little glimpse of what all the people here are wearing and doing. It's steampunk and historical fashion, so that's why we all are here. And speaking of credits, all the credits to the photos are also in video description, just so you know where to look up more fancy photos of awesome costuming. Now I do have, well, I'm a little bit, well, confused that you are not in one picture, Arsenal and Jules, because I only know you as duo. So I think you do have a combined Facebook page, which is Jules H. Aetherton and Arsenal Best Cosplay. So you, most of the time you two work together when doing costumes, if I'm not mistaken. Jules, what is your part in doing your outfits?
Yeah, well, we live together, so it's kind of convenient that we do things together. My part is doing the whole sewing stuff, as in the actual sewing. We kind of create the idea what we want to do together. It doesn't depend if it's just for me or just for him or for both of us. We talking about what we are going to do, how we want to do this, what's the look of it, how it should look when we finish. And then we start to talk about what we need, fabrics, special items, kind of like this. And after this, I do the whole sewing stuff, like patterns, like fabric creations, if I do need special techniques and something like that. And after this, I make the costume how it should be. So that's my part.
Arsenal, what are you doing? Sorry to cut you off there. Do you want to say anything? Okay.
Well, it's really a convenient relationship because I always describe it a little bit like she's doing the software, basically everything with cloth related, and I'm doing the hardware part. That's mostly the props. And also a little bit of the additional design, sometimes even a little bit helping in the sewing, especially with its descriptions in the instructions that are not so clear, but mainly she's doing the sewing. But the most important thing for us is usually that we are developing a design together and always trying to aim for a coherent design that is really from top to bottom in one fluent design language, I call it, that starts from the actual cloth down to the jewelry that I'm also making usually, and all the props and fun stuff too, of course.
So you lovely people out there, you have been putting your locations in the chat, and I'm honestly really impressed because we have Norway, we have the West Coast in the US, we have Australia there, we have Germany there. So thank you for tuning in here, and I hope you'll have a little bit of fun with us. This was our little introduction, so you got to know a little bit our participants here. And now, because we are speaking of steampunk, and I think that's probably for me it's the most hated question in steampunk, but I would like to ask you all to answer the almost unanswerable question, what is steampunk, but in one sentence? Blue Lady, would you like to start?
Yeah, of course. For me, steampunk is Victorian science fiction, in particular, heavily inspired by the works of Jules Verne and H.G. Wells and those kind of Victorian era authors.
Fräulein Rosalinde, what would you add?
I would say steampunk is adventure and stories and fantasy in a very pretty package.
Tessa?
Since Joe already said exactly what I wanted to say.
Sorry.
Science fiction. I would say a vision of a world from a Victorian perspective that gives a different sense of reality. How do you call it? Another sense of reality.
Yeah. Jules?
Yeah, I think for me it is a vision that I can bring to life in my own way.
Arsenal? I know you're the last one. That's you can also say I'll second
okay.
that.
It's always ladies first, so it's totally all right. For me, it's basically retrofuturism in a Victorian aesthetics package with the spirit of the Victorian era. So, like, we can do this and very open-minded towards at least technology and what the future can hold.
I hope.
Was that more than one sentence?
I don't care. It was short enough. Well, I always say it's kind of an alternative timeline that answers the question, what if? So what if the world had developed another way that we know it, and steam is still the main source of power? How would that affect the clothing and our environment, the design and everything? But I think with all your short answers, people out there might get a little bit of a glimpse what steampunk is. And you see all the pictures, you see us, we're wearing pretty much all steampunk, or at least steampunk inspired stuff. And to jump right in the discussion and maybe get a little bit away of me talking and asking questions, maybe we can get together and answer that question, why is steampunk the, well, weird relative of historical costuming? Who wants to go first? Otherwise I could just go on and talk a little bit.
Said ladies first, but if no one else wants to jump in right now, I can take the first step. I think it's a good relative in so far that in a way steampunk is based on the Victorian aesthetics and the Victorian era, from as well as the spirit, as well as the clothes or technology, but is from that developing into the fantasy part or the retrofuturism, what I told earlier. So that's making it weird, or punk, if you like. And so I think that's the main connection. That's somehow the base or the root of it all.
I can also jump into this part by saying I do both. I make historical clothing, I also do fantasy, and I also do steampunk. And I started actually with more historical stuff, and I felt really restricted by it. If you want to do it historically accurate, you have so much silhouettes, materials, there are so many, I felt like a lot of rules. And for some people that can be really liberating to have these rules and like very clear. But I felt so constricted, and I wanted to have more freedom and play with my imagination and be more of an artist, thinking about different realities, about character development, about backstories, and just feel more free. And steampunk gave me this room to play around more with this aesthetic.
It's really funny that you describe it that way, because Jules and I came basically from the opposite direction, from cosplaying Star Wars. But there you have the same problem. If you recreate a specific character, like let's say Jango Fett, you have a very specific set of rules because the origin is there, and you are trying to recreating it as best as you can. And for us, it was basically the same. That it's kind of a liberation to do your own thing or your own design ideas and be more creative, without completely losing the part of research something that already was there. And that's what I meant with the basis. As Victorian, you have such a rich base. You can dig into it and search for influences in the Victorian era, but then you can run with it. You can do anything you want with it, and that's the beauty of it.
Yeah, I agree. Oh, sorry.
I just saw nodding heads and said yes. Go ahead.
Yes, I agree. Essentially with what everybody else has said. A lot of people think steampunk is a bit weird because it's not historically accurate and because there aren't really any rules. You can kind of, if you want to go kind of down the historical Victorian route, you can, and that's certainly the route I like to go down more than the more sort of punk side. But I think because there is that punk element, that people kind of don't always associate easily with that, or they find it a little bit scary is not the quite word, but a little bit unsure of that. And it's obviously just because it's a big sort of mixing pot of all these different styles. Sometimes people don't know what to make of it. So yeah, I think that's why it comes across as weird to some.
It's also that this freedom gives you opportunity to include things that you could never include into historical costuming, be it aspects of clothing that are extremely modern, like, you know, the way something is revealing, for example. But also, I mean, you've mentioned Victorian costumes, but I've seen steampunk with 18th century. I've seen steampunk with Regency. I myself do mostly Edwardian at the moment. So you have a large range, and you can include a lot of things. And from that cosplay perspective, for Jules and Arsenal, you know that you can basically steampunk everything. You're doing it, I know.
That's what we're doing.
Definitely.
Yeah, right. I don't know if the pictures already were in the slideshow, but what we do, or what is a big thing of our steampunk, we do a steam trek. So we steampunked Star Trek really, really hard. And that's kind of our thing. It started as a fun thing. I think you saw the picture on DeviantArt or something like that. I don't remember exactly. And he showed me this picture, and it was like, look, this looks so cool. And it was Lolita style that time. But he thought me, we could do this, but we can do this different. And I thought, yeah, that's cool. We can kind of go with steampunk and go with our other obsession, Star Trek, and do both. And that's what I think is really cool about steampunk. You can not just go in the direction of the historical view of it, you can also go in any other direction. You can basically do everything with steampunk. You don't have to be restricted on the historical side. You can go in every direction, do whatever is you want to do, use your fantasy and be creative and go with it. It's so cool.
I think that if you're looking at Facebook groups of steampunk, there's often the question, is this steampunk? Because the lack of a proper definition is also making it difficult for newbies to get into it. You have all this freedom, but you still need some kind of guidelines or guidance to get into that. And looking at the chat, there's also the notion that people also enjoy to do proper reconstruction because it gives guidelines to how to do something. And yeah, definitely, but with steampunk that's pretty hard. And I think that's also something that keeps people from joining or from starting. And we did prepare something on starting, just so you know where we all are coming from, and I would like to ask Fräulein Rosalinde to share our first outfits. I need to switch here, so we'll be off screen a little bit. You should still be able to hear us though, and I need to wait. Here we go. Here are the first outfits where now you should be seeing them. Blue lady, do you want to tell us something about this photo?
Can do. Yeah, this is mine and my husband. Our first, well, it's not our first steampunk event. It was our first big steampunk event that we went to, and this gown in particular is the first gown that I completely made myself from scratch for steampunk. Prior to that, and I don't know if you'll show that the other image that I gave to Clara. Prior to that, we'd just gone to kind of small events, small meetings, and I've just kind of putting things together out of my wardrobe that already kind of worked. This was the first time we went to like a full-on event where you felt more comfortable, you know, dressing up fully. We call it a kind of steampunk vest, you know, or full-on steampunk outfits. So yeah, this was the first outfit that I made, and my husband is wearing his Regency ensemble. So obviously you can see from there where we've crossed over from our kind of historical reenactment and brought that across into the steampunk scene.
I'm afraid I kind of started in the middle of this presentation. I'll try to go back because I think that was an earlier one. Yeah.
Yeah, so this picture, obviously, I apologize, it's very dark, but this is a very old picture. This is actually from my very first steampunk event that we went to, which was just kind of a gathering at a local museum with a few people from that we sort of met online. And yeah, so this outfit was just put together from a jacket I already had, a dark skirt I already had. I bought the hat, and the hat is the same hat that I'm wearing today. It's still going strong over 11 years later. So yeah, it's just a simple put together outfit, just so I kind of felt like I fitted in, you know, but I didn't start making anything kind of extravagant until we kind of decided that, yeah, we like these people, and we like, you know, these events and these gatherings, and we wanted to do it more. So I think it's important that you don't necessarily stress about having an amazing, perfect outfit, you know, straight away. You know, go to a couple of events, get a feel for the different types of outfits, and sort of where in the sort of steampunk world you kind of feel you fit in.
Okay.
Oh, well, this was my very first steampunk outfit, and I think it's at Elf Fantasy Fair in the Netherlands, and it was, I think, 2009. And actually, I went with the saying, well, when in doubt, dress Victorian and then add. I think it's by J.D. Foxen, I don't know. But that's why the skirt is a truly Victorian pattern, but I think it was meant to be like, well, worn with a proper bustle, and all the rest is like, well, the umbrella is from my grandma, and the fox fur is from my great aunt, I think. I'm not sure. It's been in the family for a while now, and it's well, kind of cross-eyed. But maybe speaking of fur, don't buy new. If you have some vintage, it's okay. But you know, I don't want to open this whole discussion here. I had it. I wore it there. I'm not wearing it anymore. So this was just like, okay, I had been looking at photos and, well, thought to just kind of do my own thing, get a little bit Victorian, and, well, it was okay, I think. I do own all of the stuff other than the blouse, because that one is bought still, but I haven't been wearing it for a while now. I did make a new vest with the same fabric that I used for the vest there, because I had some leftovers. So yeah, all the upcycling and recycling of steampunk.
Okay, I have to go back over these. There we go.
Okay, that's us. That's our very first steampunk outfit, but as we told you before, we haven't been doing costuming a while before. We done a couple of sci-fi things, and we also done a couple of dark age things. So it wasn't actually our first outfit. I don't even think we do have pictures from this, and it's probably better this way. So the story to this picture is we went to a convention here in Cologne where we are. It's the role play convention. It doesn't exist anymore, but it was a big thing at the time. And we went there with friends. They came by and visit us, and in the evening before we went there, Arsenal and the friend of my friend were starting talking about we need to do something, we need to wear something, we need something to look cool. And they started to do stuff with old things we had in our closet. And then we were at this event and everyone was like, oh, is this the steampunk thing everyone is talking about? And we were like, what the heck is steampunk? Because it was actually the intention we had was to do kind of a wasteland apocalyptic style. So after this event, we went home, opened our computers and were Googling steampunk. What the heck is steampunk? And we opened Google and we saw these pictures and we were like, holy shit, we want to do this. And after this event, we knew this event would be happening the next year. So we had 1 year time to prepare for this event. And this is the result of the 1 year preparing. That's this picture.
I think we have another one of yours.
That's the first attempt to do actual historic correct.
About
things.
6 years later, and then we started steampunk. So we did it again the other way around. Came from the sci-fi corner to steampunk, and then also did a little bit historical stuff.
Okay.
I'll unmute myself, sorry. Yeah, this is actually not my first steampunk costume, but my first fantasy costume. That was 2008 at Castle Fest. I thought I was the shiznit, and I'm looking at this picture like, what the hell was I thinking? But okay. Very ill-fitting corset, all store-bought, of course, very synthetic. 1 year later, I think in 2009, we had the Nox Obscura in Amersfoort in the Netherlands. That was the first attempt of the guys from Castle Fest to do a steampunk event. I went there. I don't have a picture anymore because my disc crashed. But it was amazing. I was blown away by all this very cool, inventive spirit. And I shortly afterwards started working with Castle Fest for the Steampunk Garden. And then in 2012, I had the first Emporium Burnesque, which was our first Dutch indoor steampunk event. I think, Clara, you were there too, right? At the first one. Yeah, but I was so inspired with the like dark Victorian. Was probably my first attempt at doing anything fantasy, goth, historical is not the word.
Oh, that's me. That was actually not even for a steampunk event. That was for a party, for a birthday party that had a motto, and the motto was urban fantasy. So there were all kinds of costumes, and before that, I had bought the top hat and the goggles because I was already kind of leaning in towards maybe one day I want to do something in steampunk, but everything else just came from my closet. So I just looked what I have and I just found a skirt and another skirt and a third skirt and just kind of pinned it all together with safety pins. And I had the bag and the corset. I already own the corset, which I bought at some medieval fair place. It's a leather corset that could be worn like in any kind of fantasy setting, so that doesn't necessarily have to be steampunk. So this was like the first attempt at doing anything steampunk at all, and I kind of wore the same thing to my first steampunk event, which was the steampunk fair in Bochum, the big indoor fair with a lot of carousels. Yeah. Oh, I will. Yeah.
Okay, now you should be able to hear me again because I have been muted for our listeners out there. And this, where you did get your corset from, plays into a question that has been in the chat, where we all get our materials from. And I think that's one big thing that drove me into steampunk, because compared to all those rules that I witnessed in historical costuming, steampunk was relatively easy, because you could go thrifting, you could go to second-hand shops, you could go to the flea market, you could actually make something, but you don't had to have a look on materials so much as you have to do when you want to do something historically accurate. So the chat is asking, what are your favorite places to get material for steampunk? Or maybe where do you get your outfits from when you're doing steampunk? Maybe a little bit bigger, and also to maybe give Tessa the opportunity to bring in our special guest if we're talking about how we do our outfits.
So shall I start then, maybe?
Yeah, please.
I started recycling old thrifted clothing, so stuff that was just found in thrift stores. Went to army dumps because I was like, oh, that's also steampunk enough. So now I've been a little bit more particular, getting €1 fabrics in our local fabric market, and have been very cheap. It's one of my cheapest ones to make as far as materials go. And I sort of mix it all the time now. So I have very, very exclusive, very expensive stuff. I buy stuff, I make stuff. And the cool thing is, and this is the point where I can introduce the person that I'm at home with now, I got the opportunity to work with some really cool designers, and we had some fashion shows, and a lot of the time I don't have the skills to really work around harder construction problems that I have. And then I found that working together with someone who can work through my ideas, like this lady was like partially my idea. I think we started with the fabric. And I got a very cool person, which I'm introducing now, which is Marina from Marisha in Cologne. Yay.
Hello!
And she's like been my partner in crime for years. We've been talking how many years we already know each other. It's been
so many.
And yeah, we found that we have the same idea of aesthetic. We like the same stuff, and we kind of inspire each other.
That's true. You often have ideas, and I come buy some materials, or let's go crazy and see what we can make with this. And one of the outfits is also made of old computer parts. It's not even sewn. There is not a single machine stitch. It's all glued and handwork and some burnt leather and wire, and it's also one of the coolest looks we put together. So collaboration makes huge difference.
And it's been really cool to be able to meet people that have the same ideas. And every time I have something in my head, I can just talk to her, and we somehow lift each other on a whole new level.
Mad inventors united.
Yeah, there's actually something on the doll right now that she's working on, and I can't wait to see what's going to happen with this. So I don't know if anybody wants to know anything from Marina.
Well, I'm sure we'll get to it along the way.
Especially talking to you, chat. If you have any questions, feel free to ask. If you want to ask Marina some questions, do that now, because you won't be here for the whole panel. But I want to ask the others, how do you put together your outfits, until we wait for some questions? Where do you start? How do you get your materials?
Oh, I'll jump in if you want.
Yeah, go ahead.
I'm a dressmaker by trade. It's what I do. It's my business. So I'm always shopping for fabric, and whether it's online or whether I'm out and.
Oh, there has been connection.
Fabric.
There was a slight connection issue. If you could repeat what you just said.
Oh no, it's telling me my internet connection is unstable. Oh, horrible, horrible technology. Hopefully it'll behave itself. Just check on the right Wi-Fi. Yeah, it should be okay. Sorry, I do apologise.
It's not Steam driven. Yeah, that's
no,
probably
I know,
the problem.
Cyberpunks. Yeah, I'm a dressmaker by trade, so I'm always shopping for fabric. So I just tend to keep an eye out, whether it's online or if I'm out and about and I spot a fabric shop. I'll always have to go and have a little look in there, and because you never know what you might find. I try not to. I have a whole wall of fabric in my stash, and there are some fabrics that have been in there for years. Because sometimes you just see something and and you just don't know. Sometimes you might have a project in mind, and I'm trying to get better at only buying fabric if I do have a project in mind for it. Mainly because I have such an issue that I just can't fit more fabric in at the moment. But yeah, sometimes you just don't know if something catches your eye, and you'll just buy a few meters and sort of keep it to one side. So if I'm making something, I will also look at thrift stores, charity shops. You can pick up some wonderful pieces in charity shops, especially if you want to go for a slightly more casual look rather than a full-on Victoriana look. But yeah, I mean, there's been so many kind of trends over recent years of kind of Victoriana being in fashion. So you can pick up, lacy Victorian blouses, jackets and things like that. It's also great for finding shoes as well if you're not adverse to buying secondhand shoes. Yeah, you can pick up some great bargains that way as well.
When you just said like thrift stores and what I do, and I know Clara also does a lot, is check out if there are any sale events by theaters. Because very often they have to clear out their costume departments, and then you can find a lot of really nice stuff there. Of course, very often the material is not necessarily on the, historically accurate side.
It's stereotyped.
Yeah, there's a lot of nylon and plastic, but they usually have really interesting silhouettes and shapes. And what I noticed is that often these clothes are, of course, made in a way that they can be altered really easily, because they have to fit people of different sizes and shapes, and that of course is also very helpful if you want to use something and change it into whatever you need. But there's I found some really interesting things that could really be changed into other things.
I've always been saying that the natural habitat of the steampunk is the flea market, because you can get all kinds of stuff you can make into something else. And I know that our little flea market here, where Fräulein Rosalinde and me are living, the possibilities of running into another steampunks are really high. So getting the really good stuff got kind of difficult.
For us, it's a little bit different, or it developed a little bit different, because we are very design-driven or idea-driven. So usually if we see basically a fabric and have an idea for it, we start forming the idea very specifically, and usually you don't find what we are already having finished in our head. So usually we are ending up making almost everything ourselves. I wish we would find more on the flea market or in thrift stores that would fit our design in the head, but usually we are still back on the table doing it ourselves. That's also a restriction basically that we are putting upon ourselves. But well, you have to decide if you're going for your idea and or if you go for compromises.
Well, Jules and Fräulein Rosalinde and me, we are also in a group of seamstresses that do fabric swatches, so that we swap around our fabric. So I know that Jules does have jacket that's made of some fabric that I bought on a fabric market some while ago, so that's really helpful if your stash is growing and growing and growing. And I recently sorted it, and I might have a slight problem with striped fabric, so yeah, I should work on that.
Do you have any black and white fabric? Because then you need to give it to me. I need it.
Well, I can have a look. I think mostly my black fabrics are all stretchy, so I'm not sure if you can work with that.
We can make a trashy patchwork.
Yep. I saw a question about this. The pattern, the sewing part of it. Do you start with patterns, or do you adapt it yourself, or how do you work when you do it in the process? And I actually share my patterns with a lot of friends. You're not supposed to, of course, you have to buy them all the time. But we help each other out with the shapes, and might be a good question for you as far as how does your design process work? How do you start?
Yeah, that's true. I think it goes back to your earlier question about the weird cousin of historical costuming, and I really wanted to say that you cannot do one without the other.
Yes.
So you cannot be completely steampunk and not know about historical costumes, and the other way, you cannot make a historical dress and then you go out and you see those people with goggles and all those things and then not go into that. So it all kind of goes together, and so you do need some historical patterns to get started, even if it's from Burda and it's some kind of Victorian thing. Along the way, I'm pretty sure you will modify it, make it shorter, longer, add buttons, take things away. But as a base, I think it's a good thing to use some historical material and then just go wild and improvise. And so by now I have quite a big library of historical fashion books and patterns of all kind of makers. But at the moment, I'm also doing so many changes to them and also making so many patterns. And with Tessa also, I actually have a mannequin shaped after her. So
with extra padding.
Right. So yeah, you just throw some fabric on it and see how it fits, and then drape, and then take one sleeve away and add some more. And a couple of weeks later, boom, traveling lady.
I wish it would work like that.
Because I thought about this famous simplicity coat pattern that everybody has, this steampunk coat. I was
going to say, are we going to talk about the simplicity?
No, let's not.
I bought it, but I have not used it yet. But it's been in the same stash as my fabric for years now, and since I saw the pattern popping up everywhere, my motivation to use it was, well, dwindling away, kind of.
I'm really guilty here. Sorry. I used it.
I've made it, and it is still one of my favorite items of clothing. I have to say. The thing is, I made a mock-up out of IKEA Bomull fabric, and I've never made it again out of a normal fabric because I really love this coat. And it's my favorite item for when we do our expedition camp situation, because it's already dirty and I don't really care.
I need to ask here, who of you has that pattern and has made it? That's what I was guessing. The lady.
We have it and we didn't make it.
Yeah, same. Yeah. Have it and didn't make it. That's the thing. Since the Lady Couture, you're also a dressmaker by trade. Do you do your own patterns, or do you use patterns that are around?
Yeah, I mostly draft all my own patterns because actually technically under copyright laws I can't use the commercial patterns to sew and sell the clothing. I can, if somebody buys a pattern and brings it to me, I can make it up for that person, but I can't sell items made from those patterns. So I tend to draft a lot of my steampunk items from scratch. Which is why I haven't actually used that simplicity pattern. However, there has been a group in the UK of seamstresses in the steampunk scene who they set themselves a challenge to make that pattern and then all turn up to an event. And it was amazing to see how many different interpretations of that pattern there were. Because that's the beauty of steampunk, putting your own spin on something and making it unique to you.
There was a question in the chat which pattern we're talking about, and I actually just realized if that picture is still in the slideshow that I'm wearing it on one of them. So the picture where I wear the flight cap and have the big gun in my hand, that is the one where I'm wearing this coat. So
It should be in the slideshow in a couple of photos, just because then it's starting again from the beginning. But maybe we can also talk a little bit about patterns in general, where we get our patterns, if we are using them, and which ones are our favorites, because that might help sewing people out there, which I guess most of you are if you are joining us because of CoSy. So I would start and say I started with truly Victorian patterns, because as the name already suggests, they are historical, and yeah, I like the saying, when in doubt, dress Victorian and then add. So start with something that is historical and then start adding fantastical items and bits and pieces to it to make it steampunk. So which patterns do you use if you do not draft your own?
To be honest, I started with a border pattern. It was the pattern of the first picture, of the first dress we made. I think both of the dresses, mine and Arsenal's, they're both from border. At that time, it was okay for me because it was just starting, and I think the simplicity pattern was the second one I made. But after this, I evolved. I'm self-taught, so I need to find out how I do things. I don't do things the proper way, probably. And you don't want to see the inside of my things, so let's not talk about this.
Absolutely same.
But I started to evolve, and I wanted to try new things. So I actually went to look for patterns I could use. I tried a couple of Truly Victorians. I tried a couple of Loving Moon. I tried a couple of... Yeah, I think I did a couple of the ones you can get when you put out in Google historical patterns. And after this, I tried to go further, and I bought a book from Janet Arnold. And I did a dress from this book, which was by far the, how should I say, the biggest project in terms of doing a pattern, because the pattern in the book is like this big, and I'm this big. So we had to find a way to pitch to each other. But this was also a thing I wanted to try. I really wanted to do this and see if I can do the math, to be honest. And I didn't do the math because Hubby did the math, but we managed. So if you want to do something really, really crazy, the Janet Arnold books are really cool for this. They have some pretty cool, really accurate dresses in it, and I will definitely try another one.
I also use a Truly Victorian and Laughing Moon. Those are my favorites so far. Simplicity was everything but simple, in my opinion. I didn't like them, but some of them have some good ideas. And I've tried the Black Snails now a few times, and we already talked about it before, but you didn't see it. There's some really cool ideas in that as well, and she's still working on them to perfect them, you can tell. So I'm curious, and I know that Marina has different ways of going.
Well, of course, Truly Victorian I think is a must, because they are quite easy to follow, and you get pretty much what's on the picture. And they're good to get some experience, so then you see how the patterns are shaped. So they're quite, they have a lot of similarities that you can adjust to your own figure, so you can already start experimenting from there. Then another one of my favorites is Ageless Patterns, and actually the jacket that Tessa is wearing is from there. The asymmetric, it has this like a diagonal closure with buttons on it, so that's already a modified version of this, and I've made a couple. They're great. And I think once you're comfortable, then one of my
Shall I hold it up for you, like assistant?
It's it's my assistant is showing, and if you get it today, you will also get some free rubber gloves. These are two of my, I actually have a huge library, but my two favorite books are this one for designs. This doesn't actually have any patterns, but a lot of very beautiful fashion plates to look for different ways to do sleeves and so on. And the other book actually has patterns and then variations. Maybe you can, or I can flick through it. At the back, it shows, so it gives you patterns and measurements. and how to adjust it for yourself, and then also different ways of to do jacket fronts or sleeves or collars, or how to do, and the trims for example. And this book is wonderful, and I think if you have that, you don't need anything anymore. You can just experiment, watch movies, get inspiration, and see what you can make. A lot of bustle skirts, for example, there is so much draping, there are no patterns for this. You just put on a bustle and see what looks good.
For those who are just getting started with sewing, I want to recommend the Cosplay McKell's patterns, because those work very well for steampunk. I have one of the patterns, I think it's the Papillon pattern. It's for a jacket. I use that to make, well, a jacket, and the vest is also like overlaps in the front, and I also made my very first corset with that pattern, and I think Jules also did that. And I actually made it because Jules recommended that pattern to me, and I was so afraid of doing corsets on my own, but that pattern really worked well. So if you are in need of some really good instructions, I can highly recommend those patterns too. But going back to what Marina said, looking at pictures is so important when coming up with steampunk, well, outfit ideas and how you want to do something. Jules and Arsenal already said they start with a design idea. Well, if you didn't do that already, you definitely should check out their Steam Track stuff. So I know there's a whole timeline involving that. So there's this idea, and then you start designing, if I got that correctly. Please correct me if I'm wrong. So
Correct.
I'm wondering, when you start, all of you now, not just you two sitting left and right to me in the panel, if you want a new outfit, how do you start? So do you have like an idea, I want to do, well, something in black, or do you, well, yeah, how do you start? And maybe for all of you out there who want to start with steampunk and you can sew, and you've got some ideas from us now, and I will put a link to well, the Pinterest pinboards of the Clockworker, which Fräulein Rosalinde, Jules and me are working on, and some couple of other people, so where we collect like inspirations. And there's also one pinboard with steampunk patterns, so that's why I will be put that link in the chat. But if you're now starting and wanting to do steampunk, how would you do that? How would you start an outfit?
Oh, that's super hard, because every outfit has kind of a different development history. For example, for the first one from the picture, it was a really long time. We worked on the idea almost a year, and to make this outfit just took like 2 or 3 weeks. But nowadays I normally I like to go shopping fabric. I really love this. So I go into a shopping store and I see a fabric, and it's normally like, whoa, I need this because I know exactly what it's going to be. It says, mommy, I want to be this, and that's how it starts for me. But I know I sometimes have to do things I didn't come up with because Arsenal come up with them, so it's a little bit different, I can tell you.
Well, it's usually very different for every project, as Jules said it. Sometimes it even starts with just a piece of jewelry we saw, and just from that developed a complete outfit idea. Sometimes it's, for in case of our Steam Track, I have a uniform, of course, as original form from a specific Star Trek series, and put it into a timeline, and then I'm researching from that, okay, this has to be like, I don't know, 1770s, so what are those styles in that time, and starting from the idea first, and then looking for the fabrics fitting to that design. But as she also said, sometimes it's sometimes it's really like, oh, this fabric would be perfect for such a thing, and well, but we have by now also the golden rule: never buy fabric without being able to tell which project it is for, because otherwise our stash would be also humongous.
That's a lovely theory.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, the problem is you have too many ideas. That's what we find out. But basically, for every cool design or every cool fabric, we do find an idea or project we can do with it. So it's not that much limiting, sadly.
But in theory, it might work. Well,
In
Theory, it might work, but you know, you've been visiting us. I have a fabric stash underneath my sofa because I'm running out of spaces. So we're working on it.
I just sorted my fabric like 2 weeks ago, and
it's a lot.
it's a lot. It's a lot. I Marie Kondoed it all, which did help, but it's just too much. And I really don't sew enough. I'm not that good of a seamstress, actually, so I don't really sew that much. But I do love my fabric, so there we go. For me, when I want to make something, very often this really has a story element. So I have this person in mind that I want to be, and that person needs certain clothes for this special social setting that I'm going into, be it like for expeditions or for a social afternoon tea or for, you know, going out looking at things. And then this person needs suitable clothing for the job they do or for the adventure they're about to do. So this very much governs how my clothing will look like, that and my personal ability or inability to make it.
I have exactly the same thing. I normally have an event that I need to have an act at, or I have an idea for a performance or whatever, and I need a certain character for this. And I used to just put some like accessories on my outfit, and that was my steampunk. And now I changed it, and I really want it to be a proper personality, a story which needs to have a backstory or a development in it, and it also needs to be, well, functional, not necessarily like 100% functional, but it needs to have coherence. And this has changed, I think, mainly. It used to be like I put some gears somewhere, let's glue some gears on it, and I'm not doing that anymore. I try to stay away from brown and gears as much as I can, just to make a point already, sorry guys, and to be able to show you that you can be a very steampunk without any of these two.
Exactly my feeling the same, because for me also design has to have some credibility to it. I mean, we are all moving in the realm of the implausible plausible, as Walt Disney once said it. So it has to have the feel that it could be functional, but even if there is a gear, that gear has some sense beneath it. So it's not just put there to be steampunk. That's also, I think, a very important part, at least for our steampunk, that to achieve that coherency in design. So that's not that you just ran over the flea market and jumped into stash of brass and what sticked to it, that's your outfit now. So you should have an idea behind it, and that's also the beauty of steampunk for me, so that you have the freedom and to delve into your creativity and develop those ideas, and not just glue gears on it and call it steampunk.
And that, if that's what you want to do, I mean, do it. So
go ahead, have fun.
Not limiting anybody here. I really liked your idea of jumping into this big bucket of brass stuff and just have it stick to you. I mean, that sounds like an interesting concept, and I'm just trying to think of what this person would then represent.
Don't forget to dip in glue before you do it.
I glued literal gears on my cheek, so yeah.
Did that too, was not a good idea. My skin didn't like that.
Nope, I got a rash.
Same. I want to direct the same question of how to start to Blue Lady, because you've been a little bit quiet here and everybody has been talking, so I'm just throwing that ball to you now.
Yeah, I mean, how do you start? It's like the others have said, it's such a kind of an open and a complicated question at the same time. For me, I often start with either kind of an extant Victorian garment that, or whether it's a fashion plate or an original museum piece, that has something about it that kind of piques my interest. Alternatively, it could be a costume in a movie or a TV series, which has some elements to it that I kind of might pick bits and pieces from. And yeah, that's often how I kind of tend to design. One of my more recent pieces that I made in the last couple of years was a blouse which was inspired by, and you'll like this, Clara, it's Mary Poppins' stripy blouse that she wears in Mary Poppins Returns. I think I'll put a picture of it in the
it's in the slideshow. Yes,
it's in the slideshow. Yeah. And obviously that film is actually set in the 1930s, but I absolutely adored this stripy blouse, which had all these, it just played around really interestingly with the direction of the patterns on it. And I was like, yes, I want to steampunk that somehow. So I incorporated it into a more kind of Edwardiana, turn of the century kind of Mary Poppins, with sort of poofy sleeves, but still maintaining the stripe element on it. So yeah, so a lot of times I'll say something will, an element will sort of get my interest in whether it's an original piece or a movie costume, and then the ideas just kind of go from there, depending on what fabric I can find, and yeah, things like that.
I think I'm not really starting with an idea when I do steampunk outfits, because I'm more of a gatherer and I collect stuff, so my whole wardrobe is mostly mix and match. So if I go to the flea market and I see, I don't know, stripes or ruffles or lace, I'm just gonna buy that and see at home, okay, what do I have here and what can I put together to make it a steampunk outfit, or maybe I see a pattern that I like. That was the case with the Laughing Moon split pattern, the split skirt pattern, and I thought, well, that would be really practical because it's not a skirt, it's like really big pants. So how can I put stuff together to make that an outfit? But I think you can only do that if you already have a sense of feeling what goes and what goes not. Because I could totally wear that skirt, that split skirt, with a t-shirt, and it would be totally fine to wear that. But it would not be necessarily be steampunk or be recognized as steampunk. And I think we also had the question in the chat, is steampunk limited to late Victorian? Because my period of choice is Regency, but the Industrial Revolution was well underway. So you can totally do that. And I've seen people doing that. And the thing is, what I think you have to keep in mind is, do you want other people to recognize you as steampunk? Because if not, then you can do everything. You can wear pink platforms in your steampunk. If you have fun doing that, please go ahead and do that. If you want to roll around in a bucket of gears, go ahead and do that. It's not, I just want to make clear that we are not trying to tell you this is the only way how you can do steampunk, because this is our way of doing steampunk. And I think it's our way of doing steampunk because we all are kind of involved in historical costuming too, because that makes us design our steampunk outfits differently than somebody who, well, maybe doesn't have any scene connection whatsoever, or has been mostly in the Gothic scene, or has been, well, I don't know, just throwing on costumes for different events and stuff, because that's the way we're trying to get to our steampunk. And that's also a question, because we are talking about making our steampunk outfits ourselves, and do-it-yourself is like really important in steampunk. But we are also talked about going to flea markets and going to second-hand shops. So I want to throw the question into our little round here: does steampunk have to be all DIY? And what's up with all the, well, stuff you can buy on Amazon or AliExpress that also has like the label steampunk on it? I do have a very strong opinion on that, but I want to talk about that maybe later and have you talk about that too.
Shall I jump in there? You mentioned AliExpress. I'm going to go in there straight up and say, if you're looking at stuff on AliExpress, be very, very cautious of where it's coming from. a lot of the images on AliExpress are stolen from designers such as myself, and I have had images, I had friends message me and say, I found an image of you on AliExpress and they're selling your dress, and yeah, it's nothing to do with me. My images were stolen off my Etsy store. So yeah, please be very, very cautious. Like for AliExpress, Wish, all those kind of websites. And there's actually a lot of smaller websites as well now, which also are using stolen images from designers. One of the key things to look out for is if the image is cropped so that the head is chopped off, things like that. That is normally a giveaway that the image has been stolen from somewhere. So yes, I just put that out there first and foremost. Coming back to the costume element of steampunk, or the ready-made sort of steampunk costumes, I completely understand that people come to this from all different backgrounds, different budget constraints, that kind of thing. But I do feel that steampunk it's very much it's a personal thing, and I think it's got so many unique elements and so many unique ways you can do it. I don't think you need to buy a pre-packaged "this is steampunk" outfit. As we've said, we've discussed, thrift stores, making your own, gathering different elements, whether it's pieces that are in your wardrobe already that you can combine that work. For me, I don't think you need to go out and buy a pre-made, like a cheap steampunk outfit.
I mean, the thing is, DIY also has many levels. You can make a bustle overskirt with a wide enough skirt and a lot of safety pins. And that means you don't have to sew a single stitch. You just have to kind of have an idea of where to put the safety pins. That's kind of easy. And I think, Clara, we did a podcast.
A whole episode, yeah.
A whole episode on this. And at some point, I think we said something like, well, it's absolutely okay if you go to your first steampunk event in a fully purchased carnival store fancy dress outfit that you bought somewhere. But if you're attending your 10th event, still wearing the same, maybe you should start thinking. Because I think that this DIY aspect of steampunk is, well, the aesthetics are really, really important and are probably what gets most people into it. Same thing for me. I looked at the aesthetics, and I said before, the reason why I started making my own outfits was because I couldn't buy anything. Because back then there wasn't much, and my size especially, and so it was really a necessity for me. But it is also the thing that you went to these events and people were wearing all these really, really interesting and unique outfits that you did not see in these catalogs, and you wanted a part of that, and the only way to get there is to start sewing. And I said before, I'm not a really good seamstress. I really am not. I learned to use pattern this way. I learned to do things this way, and I also said it before, we all didn't know how to sew one day, but everybody can learn it.
I would like to jump in on this. I have to make a confession. Mm-hmm. If I could find something that I really, really like and would be able to wear, because I have kind of the same problem, I don't have a size I can just go in a shop and buy something, I definitely would buy it because I'm lazy, honestly. The problem is I have kind of an image of how I want to look, and I can't get this image to work with something I can buy. It won't fit the way I want it to fit. If I have to buy a corset from somewhere, it would never be the same on my body as if I do it myself for myself. So actually, to be honest, the only thing why I'm doing it myself is because I can't buy it and make it look good on me. That's the thing. I'm totally aware that there are people who have a size and the money. It's always a question of the money to buy things, and it's totally okay. I'm so jealous that they can do this, and they should do this because the people who are doing this stuff also need to live from something. So it's a super good thing if you have the money and if you have the size to wear something like that, buy it. It's not a problem. You can still add your personal kind of thing to this after you bought this. But for me, it's unfortunately not working. I really have to do this myself to make myself look good. That's the point.
I want to jump in on the money part because I started steampunk because historical costuming was too expensive for me. So even if there was stuff in my size, because my size is not that complicated, well, proportions are, but that's a whole nother story. But you can totally buy things, but you should have a good look where you buy things and what you buy, because a lot of stuff, I mean, we all know that one black and brown striped corset that is jumping up on every Google search if you look for steampunk, and that is, well, available for, I think, under 10 euros sometimes. So you know that it's not good quality. And that's the thing you should look out, because for me personally, steampunk is also about quality, and that's why we are doing DIY, because we're doing upcycling. We want to give things a new purpose. We want things to be used again and not be thrown out, because there was also the question in the chat if it's just costuming dress up for us or if we do that on a daily basis. Well, I wouldn't go to work dressed like that, but I still have some kind of steampunk in my life, and that would be that, yeah, upcycling part, that I want old stuff to be revised and be used and not be thrown out, and just have a look where stuff comes from. And that's exactly what I would say for buying clothing too, because well, we have two amazing seamstresses here that sell their craft. So if you have the money, please consider buying from them, because they make amazing stuff, because they are steampunks. And if there are steampunks that do stuff for other people, it's mostly the stuff you really want to have. Because a lot of the stuff that has the label steampunk on it online is just people thinking, well, yeah, just glue some gears on it and I can sell it, because steampunks will buy it. And that actually was the whole point of the song, just glue some gears on it and call it steampunk. If you haven't heard that already, go ahead and Google that after our panel has finished, because it has some really good points. It's not about you're not supposed to use gears. If you like gears, go ahead and use them. They look really nice. But just don't put some gears on, you know, I'm gonna go back to pink plastic platform shoes and, well, ask 500 euros for that, because now it's steampunk. That's not the point of it, at least for me.
Totally wear them and say it's steampunk. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about selling them to people because it says steampunk on it.
Yeah.
I think the whole discussion from do-it-yourself and also buying simply finished items for your steampunk is also born just from the wide spectrum of steampunk, what it's all involving. It's, of course, in part the do-it-yourself culture is clearly in it, with all the upscaling or upcycling parts of it. But of course, we have to acknowledge that there are people out there who are blessed with two left hands and or simply haven't got the time to go into a fully made, self-made costume. And I think it's totally okay to buy stuff for them. The one thing I always ask them is just don't buy senseless. Always have an idea what you are aiming for, what you are, what you want to portray. That's for me the spirit of steampunk behind it. Never doing something without the sense or without an idea behind it. If you have that, you can buy on a cheap costume store. It's also okay if you are individualizing it, or do everything yourself. It's also the other end of the pole. It's also okay. I mean, most of us did the same development in their steampunk career, let's say like that. And I have to say, I've learned so many trades in doing stuff through steampunk. That's from sewing leather, from carving bone and wood, from metalworks. That all started with steampunk because I had some ideas and wanted to achieve them, and over that I got into that do-it-yourself culture and saw, okay, you can do things yourself. Sometimes easier than you are thinking. You just have to be brave enough to take the first step and try it. That's not trying it, it's simply being lazy. And that's usually what's keeping you from being self-made, and not that you can't do it yourself. There's the saying in German, kein Meister ist vom Himmel gefallen, basically saying there was no master without an apprenticeship before. So no one comes into this world already a full master in everything. So all of us had to learn all these traits to do the stuff we are now making, and people, the best think, oh, that's cool. Yes, but we had a long way behind us, and we tried, and we had so many failures, so many stuff that didn't work, and landed in the trash bin, but that's also part of the way. So find your own way.
And especially with the learning part, well, I experienced our steampunk community in our part of Germany, like, they really want to help each other. There's this huge point of information sharing, so just like we shared our favorite patterns, if you find something that is really working well, you either do a tutorial yourself or you teach others if they ask you that. So if you see a steampunk with like a really cool item, go ahead and ask him, how did you do that? Where did you get that? Because I think most people will help you, and if not, well, all you did was ask, so it's totally okay, and you will figure it out yourself.
And it's really wonderful when people come to you at events and they ask about your costume. Where is this from? How did you make it? Where does it come from? And we love to talk about this. This is like just a little poke and you'll get a fountain of all this wonderful information. So
definitely.
And to add to the previous point also, that it's a little bit like dressing in high fashion. You don't just go and buy a full outfit, brand label, and I'm high fashion now. No, you need to develop your sense of style, and you can buy in very affordable brands and still be the fashion icon, just because you know you have this sense. So you don't need to learn how to operate a sewing machine if it's very difficult, but go to museums, read books, watch historical films, and get the idea of this styling and where all those things come from. And then actually you can buy little parts from China or from whenever, but then it's in combining and bringing all those things together, then dip it in tea, and there you go. So
tea dyeing is
dip it in tea.
Yeah,
that always helps.
That's the staple, well, production method for making stuff steampunk. But we already heard steampunk doesn't have to be black, brown and sepia tone, so go ahead and do some colorful steampunk. If you know me, if you know my Instagram or my Facebook, you know that the last year has been, well, my hashtag challenge colorful steampunk, so feel free to join me in there and do steampunk that is not black, brown or sepia. But if you like those colors, as you see me wearing them today too, go ahead and do that too. So we're not limiting you in any kind. And speaking of films, we did a little bit of question collection in the first run. I want to do one of those, well, more easy questions, because we asked, what's your favorite steampunk movie? And I want to do a little bit of quick round here, and this time I'm starting with Arsenal.
Okay, there's not one, there are two actually. The one is the Extraordinary League of Gentlemen, and the second is Wild Wild West, which simply came too soon to be an immensely hit steampunk movie.
That's too true. Jules, what are your favorite steampunk movies?
I'm not that much into movies, more like series. I have a couple of series I really like because of the aesthetics they are using. Um, like for example, The Alienist. I don't know if it says something to you. It's a really cool series, a pretty new series. Watch it. It's pretty cool. So I'm more into series than into movies, but yeah.
Marina.
Sorry, I'm mute because we have a barky dog.
Yeah, my spotted dragon is going nuts. My absolute favorite, and I'm always surprised how underrated and unknown it is, are Murdoch Mysteries. It's TV series from Canada. It's the most, I have goosebumps talking, it's the most amazing. They're in 13th season now, 15th season, and not one episode is alike anyone before. It's based on books, but each episode is amazing. And it happens in the turn of the century Canada. And it's about a detective. He solves murders and he encounters Lovecraft and Edison and Tesla and Sherlock Holmes and all those fictional characters and real characters. We learn where Elizabeth Arden comes from or where Kellogg's cereals are originated. There is so much steampunk in it, and it's aesthetic, and the story is beautiful. It's so much inspiration that if I had to pick one, this is the best. And you can watch it over and over. I really, really strongly recommend.
Tessa?
Well, The League is one of my first favorite things. There's so many that I know, but I like also the fantasy part, like the part from Penny Dreadful, where there's the Frankenstein monster as well in it. And then now I'm getting in the Studio Ghibli animation, which also has a lot of steampunk, and also Love, Death and Robots little shows from the guys from Black Mirror. I don't know if you did little animation videos. There's one about a fox. This is actually quite steampunk, so I'm broadening my horizons into animation now a little bit.
Fräulein Rosalinde.
Well, the question is, there are movies that are steampunk, but that don't really inspire me costume-wise that much. And my favorite there is Hugo, the one about this little boy hiding behind a clock in a train station and with the automatons. I think that's really, really steampunky with the whole setup. But I do love films and series that do a lot for costuming and that I can watch and just get inspired by. And I'm just rewatching Downton Abbey, and the first two series of that are really, really cool if you want to like get your Edwardian ears up a little bit more. So something like that. But I could also recommend The Nevers, which was a really, really cool series that had a lot of steampunky elements, and film-wise, of course, the Sherlock Holmes series with Robert Downey Jr. has a lot of steampunk elements, and also the whole aesthetics. Just really, I really like that.
The lady?
I find it very hard to pinpoint down to just sort of one or two. I'm going to do a small plug here. I do have a video on my YouTube channel where I go through my top 10 steampunk movies based on their costuming. So if you want to check that out, please do. And plug.
I'm going to put the link in the description after the panel has ended.
I'm going to go out there and say my top two, well, I don't know if they're my top two, but two that come to mind. One is a total cliche. I am going to say Wild Wild West. I'm sorry. I quite like it. I know it's silly and it's a bit of a romp, you know. But when you look at it from a costuming perspective, I think it's got some really strong steampunk elements in it. Particularly the bad guys and some of the costumes that they wear in that guise, especially the henchwomen. You can draw your own conclusions about the portrayal of women in that movie, but when you look at the actual costumes that they wear in that, they are absolutely incredible and beautiful design details on them. So that's one of my favorite steampunk movies. The other one I'm going to point out is The Secret of Moonacre, which again, small plug, is forms part of my contribution to CoSy, the Costume Symposium, and the dress that I've made here. You can see my making of vlogs as well. And yeah, the costumes in that are, again, they're stunningly beautifully designed, and they're all based on, for the women in particular, the skirts are all based on Victorian lobster tail kind of open cage bustles, which normally you wouldn't see, out in the open. They'd be hidden underneath all the outer layers. But in this film, the designer decided to make a feature of them because they're just so quirky and it works and they look amazing. So it's one of my favourite costuming movies for steampunk.
I have to jump in and well, add some animation movies, because one is the movie 9, which I really like because of the storytelling and the way of the world is constructed, and because I also think that steampunk is also a really good post-apocalyptic setting, because if we don't have any electricity, well, why not go back to, well, burning things and use the steam power? I really like that idea, and I also really like Steam Boy, which is an anime, and there is this big red overall one of the protagonists is wearing when doing some flight stuff, and I really want to make that, but since it's animation, it's a little bit harder to well, get around figuring out that pattern. So in story-wise and well, world building, I definitely prefer animation movies, but as inspiration for clothing, obviously, well, real-life movies are the better ones, and I definitely second the Nevers, because there are some blouses and skirts in there that I definitely want to recreate, because it's really beautifully done. So just in general, as you can see here from our little group, everything can be an inspiration for your steampunk style. But I think we have one topic that we really need to talk about, and well, that is corsets. If we're talking historical costuming, corset is a big theme. If we're talking steampunk, it is too. And in the video description, we already hinted at, well, wearing your corset on top is totally fine in steampunk. Does anyone want to elaborate why it wouldn't be a good idea to wear a corset on top in historical costuming? I mean, most...
Yeah, I'll jump in on that one if you want. Generally, in historical costuming, the use of the corset to shape and mould the body, but also support the body. But it was also designed to support all the weight of the layers of the skirts as well. So if you try and wear a full Victorian gown without a corset underneath, it's going to hurt, it's going to dig in, it's going to rub and drag around, your hips and your waist, and it's just not comfortable. But when you wear it on top of a corset, suddenly the weight is all distributed around you, and the gown is supported by the corset, and it's much more comfortable to wear. So that is normally why you wear your corset underneath and not on the outside.
Also, it's just underwear. I mean, I don't usually wear my underwear outside today either.
But that's the same for the super movies from the 50s or 60s, that they wear their underpants over the tights. Yeah,
and it still looks weird. So, yeah, when I well, explain what steampunk is and how steampunk clothing is different from historical clothing or historical costuming, because I don't know how your experiences have been, but a lot of times when there are steampunk events and you're dressed in your fineries and you go around and then you meet some human who is not steampunk, they're mostly asking, what time period are you wearing? What time is this you do here? What historical event is this? Because of course, there is a lot of historical influence in our costuming. Well, we all do historical costuming, so that's obvious. And that's also what the public may receive, and they will, well, acknowledge that this is not modern, this is some kind of old-timey-wimey stuff, so yeah, what time is it? And then the easiest thing is to point out, well, if I would live 120 years ago and wear that corset on top, that's not a good idea, because that's underwear. So that's maybe just one major point that, well, a big difference between steampunk and historical costuming to wear that on the outside, but also steampunk outfits do not consist of so many underlayers, so you don't really have to wear a corset on the inside. You can still do that because it makes a lovely silhouette and you can build upon that. And corsets also, if you like those, well, maybe big steampunk wings or like machines on your back, corsets are really good in supporting them. It's easier to fix them to a corset than to wear like straps because they get really heavy. I see Arsenal smiling. I know that you built some stuff like that.
Yes, definitely. I mean, one of the signature pieces of Jules from the beginning, from the very first outfit, was a plasma disc with another gearbox with a big key in it on her back. And it really caused a little bit of headache to incorporate that into the costume without having an obvious means of that you are wearing it like a rucksack. So the corset strength underneath the jacket is definitely something that supports the plate on the back, and she still wears a kind of a rucksack beneath it with magnets pinned on it. So I can simply put the plate on the magnets and also remove it very easily if she has to go to the bathroom or something like that. So you don't have much time for a complete deconstruction of the whole outfit. So you always have to keep a sense of practicability also in mind in designing or constructing such things. But as you said, a corset is definitely a good support structure underneath, so that it gives the whole construction a bit of also where you place it, that it don't wanders around. So.
And there are also corsets for men. Just want to point that out too.
I even tried one once. I really like them because at least the good ones, which are of course a little bit more expensive, they are pretty neat designed, always looking like a very tightly cut vest, an example. And as all of you ladies are aware of, as soon as you are wearing a corset, the slouching is over. You can't simply slouch in a corset. You have a totally different straight up position in standing and sitting, and it's not a bad thing. So even if I don't wear them usually, I find the idea appealing.
Vintagebursche did a nice video on how he made his male corset, so if you want to check that out, have a look for that. I might put that link in the description too after this whole panel.
One thing that is that really causes me problems sometimes in the steampunk outfit, when I wear my pretty corset on the outside and want to have a big bustle at the same time, because corsets have a tendency to be too long and they kind of press down the bustle in the back. It's something that you have to solve somehow. Either you have a shorter corset or you kind of have a bustle that you can pull up at the back. But it is a problem that I encountered. So that should tell you they're not meant to be worn there, but you still want to, because having like a short jacket and then a nice corset shape underneath, it's really nice. It's pretty.
I
actually wear two. So one underneath for the structure, then the giant ass gown that she's putting me in or I'm making for myself, and then I have a smaller, more like fabric corset for the looks, decorative corset. It's not like a full-on heavy lacing corset, which I put on top. And it's always smaller or shorter than the one that I'm wearing underneath. So I'm actually wearing double corsets most of the time.
That's a good option. But wearing a corset on top also, well, like it's been said, it is a lingerie. But my favorite part of steampunk is the punk. So a Victorian girl wearing a corset on top, this is like really throwing it at the society. Like, look what I'm doing. It's like showing your ankle, like walking, to the tea shop at 6 alone. Whoa. So there's some cheeky playfulness to it.
The same, these skirts that are shorter in the front and longer in the back, they also kind of play into this. Or I've seen a lot of crinoline cages without any covering. which also is kind of this, yeah, I'm doing this.
And
Tell me about it.
And it's pretty much the same as, well, when punk evolved, well, the punk without the steam, they pretty much did the same. Yeah. And that's, why not? And again, saying you don't have to wear a corset to be steampunk. It is just one of the staple items, kind of, at least, of female steampunk fashion. The goggles are one, I think the gears, and the top hat, and then the corset. So those are like, if you... Pocket watch, yes. And if you're thinking of like guidance for steampunk outfits, those are like the staple things, and you can start building around that when you're starting to wear steampunk. But if you can't wear a corset, that's totally fine. Go wear a vest or waistcoat, or maybe I can stand up because I'm wearing just, an underbust thingy is made of leather and it's not bone, so it's a lot more comfortable than sitting in a corset all day. So go ahead and find some stuff that works for you too if you can't wear a corset. But if you want to, wear it, and wear it on the inside or on the outside. Just make sure that it fits really well, because otherwise there will be rubbing, you will get back pain if it's not fitted correctly. So either make one yourself or have somebody make one for you, or have it at least fit really well.
And before you put it on, have a look which is the top part.
Yes.
Or the front or the back.
Yeah.
Yes. So if there are loops, those go on the bottom.
To the bottom. Yep.
I don't know if you'll see, they're black on black, but yeah, the busk is the bit that goes up the front.
Yep.
Yes. Yes.
And also, if you decide to wear a corset underneath your skirts, dresses, please be aware, don't wear it on your skin.
No.
Put something underneath it. It will really, really hurt you after a while if you put it on your bare skin. So make it like they did it back in the times. It was a good idea. Put something underneath it.
Definitely, especially if you can't really wash a corset easily, so wear something that you can wash, because all those layers, they get warm, and that's totally fine, but have something washable. I think we're coming to an end here, but one thing that interests me, and I hope our viewers out there too, is how would you describe your connection between steampunk and historical costuming? Like, what things from one do you bring to the other, and the other way around? So how does it influence itself? Because for me personally, I always have at least a little bit the feeling, and that's why I named that panel the weird relative, that people who only do one of the two things tend to look a little bit down on the other. Like, the historical costuming is like, okay, what are those weird steampunks doing? This is not historically accurate. Why are you using, I don't know, stretchy fabric? And why do you wear your corset on the outside? And people on the steampunk side are more like, okay, they are so snobby, I can't use whatever I want, and there are those rules. And we are all people who do both. So we know that this is not the case. And yeah, how would you describe your connection between those two?
If I can jump in on that, for me, the one needs the other, because in the aesthetic I would like to project, I need the whole Victorian vibes. I need the aesthetics. I so like how they make things look. For example, they had scissors or something like that. They weren't just there to be scissors, to be used. They also looked really good. And I'm totally into this aesthetic of Victorians, how they make things look like they're delicate and elegant. And I so like this curves they made. So for me, my steampunk is very heavy historical influenced. If you've seen the pictures below, I have always parts that I use from Victorian aesthetics, or sometimes before this time, sometimes after this time. but I use the time and the aesthetics from the time to make my steampunk because I like how it looks. But that doesn't mean you can do it completely different. That's totally okay. It's just for me, the one depends on the other because for me, they don't go separated. Of course, I do completely historical accurate dresses from time to time because I just want to, and because I want to see if I can do this. But it's not like I will do this all the time because it's boring a little bit if I have to be super accurate, and I kind of like to change things while I'm doing it. For example, if I have an idea why I'm working with the fabric and I would think, oh my gosh, this would look way better if I do it this way, but it's not time accurate to the time I'm doing it, I just change it with steampunk. It's okay. So yeah, the one depends on the other, but they don't have to be super accurate in both ways.
For me, I think the idea just came to me while you were talking. The historical clothing gives me, especially considering, as I said before, I kind of do not have your average size, and that gives me a chance to shape my body in a way that I like, because this whole corsetry, ruffly padding element of it makes it possible for me to look much more the way I would like to look, and that gives me a nice canvas to work on then for the steampunk element. So it's kind of a symbiotic relationship here, that I use the aspect of historical clothing that modern clothing doesn't give me, because they always have just my body to use, which doesn't really work the way I like. So, but in historical costuming it does, and then you can add on that, and that's the part that I really like.
Before I give the word to the next person to answer that question, I want to say to the chat, if you have any questions, feel free to drop them in the chat, because we will do a little Q&A after this round of discussion here. So if you have any questions, even if those are directed to any one of us specifically, please drop them in the chat and we'll get back to them after this round of how are steampunk and historical costuming related for everybody of us. Who wants to continue?
Well, I can say a little something. From the steampunking part, I like to borrow the openness to invent. And so if you put your steampunk goggles on, you look at the materials differently. So suddenly I wouldn't just use pure silks or wool, but I'm looking at paper and leather and old computer parts, and maybe I can burn and make buttons. Or how would this look? And it opens so many more possibilities for you, and it's so much more fun and crazy and inventive, and it's wonderful.
I used to think very strictly, and now I'm doing goth, now I'm doing vampire, now I'm doing steampunk, and everybody was always, I felt a lot of criticism from people and a lot of gatekeeping in all the different communities every time. So I decided to not give a bleep anymore and just do whatever the hell I want as far as shape, material, look, feel, but it's also playing with gender, which is a very big thing for me, like more different traits of myself. And I'm taking all these creative tools to explore me as a person. I've learned so much. I'm doing drag at this point as well. Totally different styles and techniques, and everything is linked together, makeup, clothing. So I'm not doing these little boxes anymore. So we can call this steampunk, but I don't care what it is. I like it. I look nice in it, and I feel pretty in it. So that's all what matters, I think.
It really melds this boundary, doesn't it? It's I'm making a bustle dress and I'm going to a ball, but I might stop over and hop to space station and invent some nuclear things. But then I'll continue to my tea party, and it's wonderful. It can be all of those things.
I think for me it's important to remember that there is a big difference between historical and the steampunk. Steampunk is fantasy, it's science fiction, you know, so you can do anything, you can be creative. And I'm not saying you can't be creative in historical, but as already discussed, you know, you are more constrained. But there are times and places where historical is more important. You know, if you're going to a particular event, a reenactment event, you know, historical is important. But yeah, just the freedom that you can bring to steampunk, but still playing on that Victoriana aesthetic for me. That's what makes steampunk so interesting. If we come right back to the kind of the beginning questions of how we got started in steampunk, and as I said, me and my husband were doing historical reenactments, and although I enjoyed going to costume events, he wasn't so interested in going to just costume events. But when we discovered steampunk and we realized, you know, you could do that crossover with, I mean, he's a tech geek, you know, he loves his computers and he loves, he's a big Star Trek fan and loves all kinds of different types of science fiction. So for us, it was a really great way that we could kind of marry a lot of our two interests into one hobby, which, you know, it's just great.
Yes, as I said before, I think the Victorian aesthetics, at least for me or for us, is the basis of it. And it's not even so much boxed as one may think at the beginning, because of course there's once the Victorian era in the sense that it is the reigning time of Victoria. But historians also stretch it to a long Victorian era that's spanning about 150 years, from the late 1760s up to the 1910s. And that's such a wide spectrum from which you can draw inspiration, from which you can draw always all those elements of design that they use in all these different times and stuff. And that's the freedom where the steampunk comes in, as also Marina said. You can take these elements and mix it different or make it your own, put something futuristic into it, but still stay in the same aesthetics. And we mentioned it several times now with the Steam track. Also in that, the goal is always to stay in the Victorian aesthetics with the signature elements of Star Trek. Is it the pattern of the uniforms from the color style, not the pattern from the shape of the uniform, and translate it into the Victorian era or the Victorian styles. But you can always recognize both of them, and that's always the beauty of it, the marriage between the two. I think at least for us or for me.
For me personally, I like both for different reasons, because historical costuming is more of a challenge for me, because at this point I've been doing steampunk for a while now, so I already said I do a lot of mix and match, so a lot of outfits come kind of naturally to me. If I'm just opening like my closet, which is really big, and then I'm like, okay, today I like this and this and this, and then here is my steampunk outfit. And for historical costuming, it's much more challenging, because I have to have a look, okay, would somebody have worn this? Would somebody have used this material? But material is something that I like to take over from historical costuming to steampunk, because there is a reason why people wore like linen underneath or wore wool on the outside, because it has some specific properties, and they didn't lose that over the last 120 years. So that's something that I like to bring into my steampunk clothing, and when I choose materials also, because, you know, we already talked about upcycling, recycling, etc. And, well, plastic can't be recycled that well. So why would I wear plastic on my body if that can't be repurposed? With cotton or linen or any other natural fabric, that's a whole other thing, because this will decompose after its time of use. So that's something where I think I combine both. And, well, we don't have to talk again about the aesthetics, because when in doubt, dress Victorian and then add. I think that really pinpoints it down to what the connection between steampunk and historical costuming really is. Just take inspiration from both, combine them, and in the end do something where you have fun with it. I think that what Tessa said, just don't put yourself in a box. You don't have to be just steampunk today or just historical costuming today. Try just to do something you like, because then there's the inspiration. Because Lately, Fräulein Rosalinde and me, we're really into Edwardian fashion, but there's still the opportunity to wear those things we make for that for steampunk. So if I'm doing something historical, I always keep in mind if I can wear that with my steampunk stuff, because no, that will play into my mix and match aesthetic, because I'm normally not doing whole outfits. I do that too. I did that with the Leo Victorian dress, and I'm probably not wearing that leopard printed jacket with anything else than the bustle, but yeah, I now know I can do a whole bustle dress set of outfit, and that's okay. Then now I can move on and learn something else. So I think that's kind of my connection to it, and maybe think about putting more fantasy into your costuming, and try to think of things your own. Be inspired by others, but don't copy. And yeah, just try to make things your own. Ask people if you need help. People will help you. That's why we're all here. And yeah, have fun, I think. I will look at the chat because we have some questions there, and this is like the last round before we're closing, because I didn't expect it as to talk 2 hours, but here we are. And I'm really glad we did, because there were some really interesting points. And now I'm reading the first question, because somebody asked, do you ever wear steampunk in your everyday life, like to the grocery store?
I'd say yes, I do, but I wouldn't necessarily wear a full-on Victorian outfit. I tend to save my, what we call my kind of full-dress steampunk for events, but I will certainly wear steampunk elements in my everyday clothing. Some people might call it history bounding, but I might add perhaps like steampunk jewellery or something like that. That I can still wear every day, so whether it's like a ruffly skirt with a Victorian blouse, you know, a slightly Edwardiana kind of look. But yeah, I definitely wear it every day.
Definitely same. I'd say that maybe casual steampunk is some kind of history bounding, because you have history-inspired pieces, but not the whole, I don't know, goggles and jewelry and stuff. Like, this dress is a really nice summer dress, because it's a cotton dress, so I can totally wear that in my daily life. And if I wear like a gear necklace, some other steampunk might recognize me as such. So yeah, totally yes.
Yeah, same here. It's some pieces and some pieces of jewelry. But since a lot of what I wear in steampunk also comes from my regular closet, like sometimes I bought things for me that I kind of just later realized, oh, that works in steampunk as well. There's always kind of a back and forth between that.
I think this also answers the second question, which I just read. Is there anything like history bounding in steampunk? Yes, definitely. I think steampunk, not just casual steampunk, is kind of history bounding. I don't know how history bounding is like. Is there like a description what history bounding really is? Because I don't know it. I just have a vague idea of what it is.
Well, for me, history bounding is just taking elements of historical costuming and wearing them every day. And essentially steampunk is taking elements of Victorian costume and wearing. So, you know, it's yeah, kind of one of the same, but also just putting that slightly different twist on it, isn't it?
I feel the same. So yeah, steampunk is history bounding. Maybe not that much on a daily basis for most, because I think most steampunks only wear their full-blown outfits at events. So yeah,
it's kind of hard to drive a car with all that stuff on your back. So
yes,
it's also a little bit weird if you go with your full steampunk, you know, event outfit into the grocery store. I did it a couple of times. I can't recommend it. It's weird, but a little steampunk element here and there, or even a print on your T-shirt. It's a cool thing to add to your day wear.
But you know, hoop skirts really help to keep social distance. So maybe.
Yeah. Maybe you should. I could try this once more, but. Normally the people are like, oh my god, she's so weird, I need to make a big circle around her.
Mm-hmm. Well, not the worst thing for certain people, so I don't know. There's one more question. Do you find that there are I need to read that again. Do you find that there are, I think, areas of the world? Wait. I read that how it's written there, and you try to tell me what it means. Okay. Do you find that there of the world has embraced it more than another? I think it means areas of the world, but
Yeah.
so we can talk about our local steampunk scenes maybe for a bit. Who wants to go first?
Maybe not again the Germans.
Yeah.
Quite like in the Netherlands before Germany, I think.
Yes. Yes.
Mainly, but it kind of, the big part of it kind of died down a little bit. There are some events that have some parks. There's still some groups active, but it's not as big as it was anymore. I used to do my event, of course, and I also had to stop it. It just, I don't know. And I actually traveled to Wales, to Phoenix, one of the more fringy steampunk events. And I think the UK still is very alive and kicking. In the Netherlands, there is still some left, but the big wave of the commercial part of it kind of died down a little bit. And it looks like it went over to the Germans.
Yep.
In Germany, there are quite many.
Yeah.
And we just came back from an event in Poland, also a big festival, and I haven't seen as many steampunk people in the audience as you would see if you go to a festival in Germany. So it also could be the location, and of course the current situation makes some difference, but I would say in Germany the scene is quite big.
I think.
Yeah. I mean, I have a lot of customers in Germany actually. I sell quite a bit to the German steampunk scene. But yeah, here in the UK, it's been huge. I mean, I've been on the scene for over 11 years. It's been around a bit longer than that. Yeah, and we're just. Normally every weekend there is an event somewhere in the UK that you can go to that is a steampunk event. We're spoiled for choice over here.
I remember starting steampunk, I think also some 10 years ago. We always went to the Netherlands because they had fantasy events where we had like more medieval fairs, Ren fairs that were more historical accurate, so you couldn't wear steampunk there. So, or you were looked down upon if you did so. So we went to the fantasy events of the Netherlands because I feel like the scene there is more fantasy driven than historically driven as in Germany. So we live close by the border, so that's no problem to just hop over there and have a look what's up there. But now, well, I'm a steampunk event organizer. I do steampunk events here, and I feel like we have like a lot of events lately. Not this year and the past year, but before that, and it's starting again. I do a little plug on September 12th. There will be the Zeitreise Hagen, so everybody in Germany come on over to that museum because we'll have fun there. And it's a really nice location, that too. And it's not just because it's my event, but you know. But even without that, we just, I feel like we just have a lot of beautiful locations that fit steampunk really well.
We have like this really, especially here in the western part of Germany where we are, there's a large amount of leftover industrial sites that are also cherished, and they're kept as museums. And Clara knows this because she's working with them regularly. A lot of these museums now start realizing that this is like something to add a little bit of color to their usual proceedings, to have the steampunks come in and like make everything fun. So this happens. I also think the steampunk.
Oops. Connection lost. I think we can just continue until she's back again. Jules and Arsenal, do you want to add something to that? Because now Rosalinde and me have been talking about Germany, but you are here with us too.
Yeah, but we are kind of in the same area as you are, so we usually go to the same events, we meet the same people. We are pretty onto it to drive for the events. We take a couple of hours driving to get there. That's not a problem for us. So we also visit events in the northern of Germany, for example, who are like 300-400 kilometers from us. And we also go to events on other Europe countries, yeah, like for example the Luxembourg or something like that. There are a couple of events that are really, really cool. So we try to get around a little bit to see what the other people in Europe are doing. But at the moment, it's kind of a little bit different, you know, about this. But we would like to go to England, for example, and visit the scene there just to look what guys are doing the whole day. And a big thing would be if we could visit the scene in the US. Because it started there.
So, sorry for laughing. I was not laughing at you. I was trying to fix our screen here, but since Fräulein Rosalinde left us, I cannot fix our whole screen on the outside. So, what you people out there are viewing now, I'm really sorry for that. But the panel has been going so well until now. So here are our technical difficulties at the end. Arsenal, do you want to add something to that?
For the German, you already covered it pretty good. The one thing maybe is really Luxembourg, because it's also a little bit of a connection point between the more southern European parts like France and also even going right down to Italy and so much that are also visiting that event. And that's always a really fun part, because you do see different streams in what they are doing. And also if you look in the internet, the US steampunk is a little bit different than we do on the continental parts. Although there's a big steampunk community in Japan that's really fantastic too. As you said it yourself, there's much drawn from the anime sources there that have many steampunk elements in it. And there you of course see much more of that in their designs and in their outfits. And that's also fantastic. And I think that's really the beauty of it, that you have a global phenomena like steampunk, that's still colored in all their specific local cultures. There are also steampunks, I saw outfits that were inspired by African steampunk. Also really cool stuff that had cultural elements from there. That's also another proof how wide steampunk can be. So.
Definitely. We are lucky enough that in our areas of the world we do have steampunk, but if you don't have any steampunk meets or events, well, consider doing your own, because it's not that complicated. Find somebody who likes steampunk too. That I think at the moment it's mostly Discord or Facebook there, where are there groups, and then, well, just pick a date, maybe do a picnic or go to a museum. Most of the time it only needs one person to start a thing and people will come. So feel free to do that. Just do the thing. There's one last question that I want to throw in, because I find that kind of funny, because is there a thing like steampunk dancing? And I think that kind of plays into the same question as, is there steampunk music? Because I always say there is no such thing as steampunk music. There are steampunk bands. So bands that do music based on ideas of steampunk, like, you know, airships or mad scientists, that bands that look like steampunk, or that have instruments that are steampunk, but they don't sound alike. And honestly, I don't know how steampunk dancing would look like. Maybe you could do like the steam pump all the time, I don't know. Yeah, maybe.
Toy.
I had one theater act where I had a ballerina, an automaton band or ballerina, and she was dancing and I was driving her, so that might be it.
Maybe.
I have one example, and my friends, if they're watching this, are going to kill me. It's not really steampunk dancing, but it's a dance phenomenon in the UK steampunk scene that was started by steampunks. And we have the metallic conga, where basically we were at a steampunk event one evening. It was an evening event, so there's music and a bit of a disco. Metallica Enter Sandman got played, and for whatever reason, the steampunk started conga dancing to it, and it's become a thing now at steampunk events. It's kind of a bit like, you know, when you do the time warp, you know, which we also do at steampunk events. Yeah, and I'm sorry to my friends.
Beautiful tradition start.
Definitely. And that's some kind of, you know, local flavor to it. I think we started to do steampunk group photos where everybody points at the airship. So that's one thing. And Germany has the time travel passport. So that's a little book where you can get stamps of every event you visit. It's like, you know, kind of a friend book, but for events. So you have this book and you can have a look at which events you were. I think that's pretty specific to Germany, and it spreads out to the surrounding countries, but I haven't seen that in other countries. So yeah, I think we'll end it here. We are already talking over 2 hours. Thank you very much, my dear participants, for being here. I had a lot of fun talking to you. I hope you enjoyed your stay here, and if not, don't show that until the camera is off. For everybody, if you liked our participants here, down in the description below are the links to all their social medias, and I'll be adding Marina's as well later, because I didn't anticipate how long she will be here with us. So I'll be adding that later too, so you'll find all of us down in the description below. Follow us if you like what we are doing. Give the video a thumbs up. I know you know all that YouTube stuff, and keep watching the CoSy videos, because there's some amazing content out there. If you have any further questions about steampunk, about historical costuming, use the comments section, and if I can't answer that, I will be redirecting to my panelists. And until then, have a nice evening. Thank you for watching, and goodbye.